All right, we are back with another video. It is Saturday afternoon around 5 o'clock, so AC is back, so I can record. So we are doing a team I like. This team I like quite a bit. This team drafted right by me. I think they did a really good job. Obviously, you're just going to see the description, so I don't know why I'm giving all of this away at the beginning. But yeah, so we're going to do Sarah's team. Team Tubthumping? Tubthumping? I don't know, I always struggle with the name for that. So anyway, let's get started. So, first pick, third overall, we did Saquon Barkley. Now, personally, I was thinking about taking Saquon over McCaffrey. Again, I don't really love McCaffrey. I know that he's going to get a lot of volume, but I also know he's going to get regression. I'm not sure how that offense will look. I guess he's Clyde Edwards-Helaire in Joe Brady's offense. Anyway, leaving all of that aside, getting into Barkley. Barkley is basically a consensus top 2 pick. He did not meet the lofty expectations of last year when he was the number 1 pick, and he was the number 2 overall pick in the actual NFL draft in 2018. But despite missing 3 games last year, he's still very effective when he's on the field. He was on the field for 84% of the offensive snaps for the Giants. So he averages about 16 to 17 carries a game, and that's not even counting his receiving. So he's a pretty good receiver out of the backfield too, and he's a good pass blocker. He's a more athletic version even of Ezekiel Elliott, if you can believe that. So he's an incredibly talented player. And he had the 3rd most fantasy points during the 12 weeks that he actually played fully, so not counting his 3 missed games from injury and him leaving a game for injury. So not counting those 4 games, the other 12, he was the number 3 back in fantasy. So obviously, the question is if he stays healthy. I think it was more of a freak injury. He's still really young. He's only, 24? So yeah, still in beginning the prime of his career right now. They brought in Jason Garrett, the former Cowboys coach, which is really the reason why I considered taking Barkley at number 1, because Garrett ran Ezekiel Elliott into the ground. The only question I really have is just what is the Cowboys' offensive line going to look like? But they did take a left tackle in the 1st round, so hopefully they can do something about that. And I think he's going to score more. He only scored 8 touchdowns last year, but he only got 7 carries inside the 5-yard line, so not very many. So I know a lot of people are really high on McCaffrey. Actually, yeah, Barkley's only 23, so he's still really young. So yeah, a lot of people are high on McCaffrey. Again, rightfully so. He had an incredible year last year. But I think Barkley in his own right is a tremendous talent. This was the right pick, the number 3 overall pick. Can't argue. Super simple. Just really like the player a lot. Next, 2nd round. So 26th overall pick. All the way down. So this was David Montgomery. I drafted David Montgomery last year in the 3rd round. I personally, this will be a biased pick, I personally like David Montgomery quite a bit. I drafted him last year because I felt he would be a bell cow back in a Bears offense that I was hoping could be a light Kansas City offense, at least on the ground, because I don't believe in Mitchell Trubisky, who is now the starter, strangely enough, and I still don't believe in Mitchell Trubisky. Actually, let me turn on the light. There we go, that's a little brighter. But, yeah. What does that have to do with David Montgomery? Well, David Montgomery is still the bell cow back in Chicago. He doesn't really have any competition. I suppose there's Tariq Cohen for the pass catching, but I don't imagine Tariq Cohen's going to steal 150 carries or anywhere near that. He gets a lot of volume, so again, he's a volume back. He reminds me of if I had to put it, he actually reminds me a lot of the guy he replaced, which was Jordan Howard. He breaks a lot of tackles, but he's not terribly fast. But he's not terribly efficient. So like he was only averaging 3.7 yards per carry, and then 1.6 after like basically yards a catch essentially. So after being touched, so he's a good pass catcher, but he's not exactly the best. And that's why they have Cohen. The rub with Montgomery is essentially last year wasn't the greatest. Like I drafted two rookie running backs, him and Singletary, and him and Miles Sanders, and I traded for Devin Singletary. Singletary and Sanders were the better players by the end of the year. Even though Montgomery had been starting the entire season, Singletary got hurt and then took over basically halfway through the year. Miles Sanders took over by week 11 after Jordan Howard got hurt. Montgomery had the entire backfield to himself, and he just didn't do a whole lot. He was only the 24th place running back in fantasy, despite having 242 carries. Now, that being said, I think that's a combination of a few things. One, the offensive line's not very good. Two, Trubisky's bad. And three, really, I'm not exactly sure he's the best fit for this offense, to be honest. But I do like the pick, and the reason why is because I think there's upside. When you have a player that's getting a lot of volume, kind of like a Leonard Fournette who was in Jacksonville, even if you don't really like the efficiency, volume means a lot. David Montgomery's getting basically as much volume as Saquon Barkley. Now, is he anywhere near as talented as Saquon Barkley? No. But at the same time, it's not like they're going to give the ball to anyone else right now. That being said, I know Montgomery's currently injured. That is a concern. I don't know if he's going to play week 1. I am hopeful of that, but I'm uncertain of that. But that doesn't take away from the fact that I still think he's a good player. I'm hopeful that Nick Foles takes over as quarterback at some point in the future this season, because I don't believe in Trubisky. I will never believe in Trubisky. I'm tired of Trubisky. He's had 3 years. There's nothing really to see here anymore. So I think that'll help him a lot when defenses actually have to respect the pass instead of loading up the box. But until that point, he's going to be the number one option on a Bears offense that's decent. But maybe he can do something with the volume. I'm hoping he breaks 1,000 yards rushing. I'm not sure of it, though. He only had 850 last year. I would say he gets a little better, so maybe 900. Maybe 250 yards receiving, so a slight improvement, and then 7 touchdowns. So I think he'll be better, but I'm taking a low end, basically bet on him just because I really don't like some of the things in his environment, but I like the volume, I like the coach. The offensive line got a little bit better. You just have to hope that first he's healthy, and that Nick Foles becomes the quarterback, because anyone who's trying to sell me on Mitchell Trubisky is lying. Sorry. No. So, yeah, I like the selection. I think if he had fallen to me in the second round, I would have been comfortable taking him. So, third round. So, the number 31 pick, we took Mike Evans. So this is a very good pick. I don't know if I would consider it a home run, but Evans certainly was one of the better players on the board. So we'll go with this was a triple, maybe a double, depending. Obviously, Evans is in Tampa. Evans has Tom Brady, so we don't really need to go too much into that. I think I did that with Hannah and Alex. He is the primary top perimeter receiver for the Bucs. I think it's good in a sense in football terms that Tom Brady's there, but obviously it's not as good in the sense that Evans they're going to be behind and throwing the ball like crazy all the time, like they were with Winston. But yeah, Evans is a very good player. He's put 4 consecutive seasons of being a top 17 receiver. 3 years ago, he was a little banged up. He missed part of last season towards the end of the season, so that's a little bit of a worry. But basically, you're hoping that he gets a little more consistent. You're hoping that the big plays are still there, and you're hoping he gets goal line work because he's never finished lower than ninth in red zone targets. But that's a worry because now you have Gronkowski. Anyway, I think he can reach his another year being a top 10 receiver. He isn't who I would have picked, but that doesn't mean he's a bad pick. There's just a lot of mouths to feed in Tampa, as I've mentioned before. There's about 9, 10 of them now with Fournette. Jeez. So I could see 1,100 yards, 9 touchdowns, a very Mike Evans kind of year. He had like 1,150 yards and 8 touchdowns last year. So, I mean, do I think he's going to be a top 5 fantasy receiver? Personally, no. But that is okay. I think he's going to be a top 10-ish fantasy receiver, and, for the draft capital, that is not so bad. So if he's your number 1 receiver, that's good. I like that he stays relatively healthy, too. He only missed 3 games last year. So, roughly the same yardage, but spread out over more games. 1 more touchdown or 2, but still, very good player. So, next round, we took, so we took a running back. We took Marlon Mack with the 54th pick in the 4th round. So this is a bit interesting. I like Marlon Mack. He actually went to the local university nearby me at University of South Florida. He's a 4th round pick 4 years ago. He has been a good player. He has ranked in the top 10 in carries, rush yards, rushing touchdowns the last couple of years. However, the Colts have drafted Jonathan Taylor in the 2nd round. Mack has been inconsistent, to say the least. At least the last, I want to say 3, so he's been in the NFL 3 years. His year 4 is last year of his rookie contract. He's been the leading running back the last 2 years. When he came in, Frank Gore was there in 2017. So last year he broke 1,000 yards. He only played 14 games. The year before he played 12 games, missed 4 games. The year before he played 14 games. So, he's been a little nicked up. So he's missed 8 games in 3 years. He's been the starter for 2 years. He has yet to post a top 20 fantasy campaign. I mean, it's hard just because, last year they had Jacoby Brissett, and that really made the offense difficult. But the year before, he was relatively healthy, and he had Andrew Luck, and then he got hurt, but he was having a very good year. So he's not a very good pass catcher at all. He only has 31 catches the last 2 years, so 15, 16 a year. And it's difficult for me with now Philip Rivers as the quarterback, who likes to throw to running backs, Melvin Gordon, Austin Eckler, for example. It's difficult for me to see a way that Mack actually meets this draft capital, just because, they wouldn't have taken Jonathan Taylor in the 2nd round if Mack was basically their premier starter. I think he's more of a backup. I know some of the projections have him a little high, but he got almost 250 carries this last year, and I don't see that. I think he's getting 100 carries less. So 150 carries, maybe 700 yards, and six touchdowns. So all regression. Just because he's ceding the role, despite having an elite offensive line, to Jonathan Taylor. And I'm not sure if I really want to take a backup in the 4th round. I notice you and Mac in the 4th round both took backups. So, they're running backs, but I'm not sure if the value was there for that. So, I know you want to take your 3rd running back. You did get your 3rd running back. I know you're probably starting him because Montgomery's hurt, and he should, in the early goings, be splitting carries. But in my opinion, I think Jonathan Taylor's going to take control of that backfield, and I'm not sure how comfortable I am using a 4th round pick on someone who's I don't think is going to be a starter the whole season. So I'm not sure about that one. 5th round, we took Calvin Ridley. So I really like this pick. This is one of the picks that I have mentioned, actually, I think to you personally, that I really like. I have Julio Jones. I took Julio Jones at the end of the 2nd round, starting of the 3rd. But I'm really high on Calvin Ridley. The same thing kind of happened with Roddy White and Julio Jones. Eventually, Julio Jones took over that job from Roddy White, and then Roddy White retired. I can kind of see that happening one of these years with Calvin Ridley and Julio Jones. So Ridley's had a very good first 2 years of his NFL career. Last year, he had 866 yards, seven touchdowns. And I think this year, with the Falcons really pushing, like I know the Bucs are really, obviously, have improved. New Orleans is still a very good team. The Panthers are kind of like tanking. So it's kind of like a question of how good can the Falcons be? I think they're going to be very pass heavy. They brought in Todd Gurley, but he's a pass catching back. Obviously, they still have Julio. They brought in Hayden Hurst. But that's really it. It's like those four guys and Matt Ryan throwing them the ball. It's Hayden Hurst at tight end, Todd Gurley at running back, Calvin Ridley, Julio Jones. I guess you could say Russell Gage at slot, but he's just all right. So, I think this is the year where Calvin Ridley possibly takes the next step. I mentioned rookie running backs, second-year quarterbacks, third-year receivers. This is a third-year receiver. This is the year where he can take the next step to being a elite player. Usually it takes 3 years for a wide receiver. So I think Julio stays healthy, so I don't think Ridley's ever going to really show out too much this year. Otherwise I would have taken Julio. But I think he's probably a top 20 receiver with the possibility for more, just because he's in a very pass-heavy offense in Atlanta. I think this is going to be his first 1,000-yard year. I think this is going to be like a 7-touchdown year. Relatively speaking, him and Mike Evans, I see as having very similar years. Maybe Mike Evans gets like 150 more yards total, but I really like the value in the 5th round for Ridley. I think Ridley I would have taken possibly Ridley in like the 3rd or 4th round. It would have been a bit of a reach in the 3rd, but to get him in the 5th is a really great get. I think he was possibly, let's look at the whole, other than maybe Mahomes and McLaurin, he was probably the best pick in this round. I really like Terry McLaurin. I do like Ridley, though, a lot. But this was a really good selection. This was working the board very well. I kind of forgive the Mac pick just because he picked up Ridley right after. So 6th round. Where are we going with this? I guess I can understand why we took Marlon Mack, because we need a running back, and then we're going with receivers I really like. So 82nd overall pick, 6th round, we took Will Fuller, the 5th. So the question with Will Fuller, as it always is, can he stay healthy? He played 14 games his rookie year, 10 games his second year, 7 games his third year. Last year he played 11. He's never broken 50 catches. He's never broken 700 yards. But when he plays, he's an incredible talent. So he's missed like a third of the games played by his team in the 4 years he's played. But when he has played, he averages about 8 targets a game, so roughly 25% of the target share. And he's the number 13 fantasy wide receiver when you compile all of it together. So I like the upside play, personally. I think, can Will Fuller be more? We've seen it, and now DeAndre Hopkins is gone. Someone has to take the job of being Superman in the Texans offense. Well, I guess Robin to Deshaun Watson's Superman to Batman. Man, I'm really messing up these comic book analogies. So, Robin to Deshaun Watson's Batman. But can that be Will Fuller? If he stays healthy, that's really the question. When he's healthy, he's borderline a number 1 wide receiver. Obviously, he's been the number 13 wide receiver. If DeAndre Hopkins is gone, which he is now, he's probably a top 10 receiver every week you start. Every week he's healthy. I'd be playing him every week he's healthy. Can he stay healthy? That's really the question. I don't think he will. At least not for all 16 games. It's year 5 now. If you haven't been healthy for the previous 4 years, I'm not betting on year 5. But I think you could bleed out of him probably 10 games. So I'm thinking like 750 yards, 6 touchdowns, maybe 60 receptions. So he's never broken 50. I think that's a pretty good year. I think he'll be excellent in the games he's healthy and playing, but it's going to be, is he healthy? But whenever he's healthy, I'm playing him. No question. I think he's probably the best option on that offense right now. Like, I don't love Brandon Cooks with his concussion issues, and he just joined the offense. I really don't like David Johnson. David Fells is the tight end. So, I mean, there's not a whole lot. I mean, they got Randall Cobb at slot receiver. There's not a whole lot going on in the Texans offense other than Deshaun Watson's the guy. So, yeah, you're hoping he's healthy. I don't know if he's going to be healthy the whole season, but when he is, I'm playing him. And he's basically a borderline top 10 receiver already. With Hopkins gone, he probably is. So, yeah, I think that's a very good pick in round 6. That's a very good upside pick. He can be your number 1, number 2 receiver, and you'll probably play him at flex. So, yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. After that, where are we going? So we went to, what? There we are. All right, so we went to round 7, 87th pick. Ooh, Tyler Boyd. All right, so it's kind of interesting that Tyler Boyd was picked before A.J. Green. It's kind of interesting A.J. Green was even picked this high, but hey, upside, I suppose. But I think Boyd, his first 2 years in the NFL, he looked not good at all. But the last couple of years, he's looked pretty good. Even when A.J. Green was there the year before last, Boyd was still a top 18 fantasy receiver. He was number 18, right on the dot. So he was last year, 8th among receivers in snaps, routes run, targets, receptions. Those are all really great things. I think, obviously, they drafted T. Higgins. You're hoping A.J. Green's back and healthy. I don't know how much I believe that. But, I like Boyd, and I think he will be better because they have a better quarterback in Joe Burrow, the rookie. Now, will there be rookie headaches? Yeah, because rookies kind of learn on the fly. But that doesn't take away from the fact that I think Boyd is in a better situation. The running game has been good. The passing game should be better. The O-line is still just okay, but I think Boyd is in for another good season. I think this is a good slot. He could probably start for you too. He's probably a flex play on your squad, and you now have 4 really good receivers that I would consider playing at any time at wide receiver 2 even. So I could see another 1,000-yard season. I could see 5 touchdowns, so a little light, a little slight. This pick is kind of reminiscent of some of Justin's picks that he's taken, so I haven't gone too much into it, but I hope we're not starting to run on lots and lots of wide receivers like Justin, because we don't need a ton of depth receivers. But I think Boyd is a good depth receiver, and there's the possibility of more there just because Burrow will be a better quarterback. Last year the Bengals got terrible quarterback play, and Boyd still was the only thing on that passing offense doing anything. So, yeah, another pick. I like. Just very, very good picks. 8th round. This is where we took your tight end. We went out. We got Austin Hooper. So, I know you really like Hooper because of his season in Atlanta. I don't know how much I want to buy that, though. I'm not sure if I'm buying what you're selling. So, is Hooper really talented? Yeah. Was he the number 3 tight end in fantasy when he was healthy last year? Yes. So both those things can be true. Last year was his breakout year. He had the most targets in his career, 96, receptions, 75, receiving yards, 787, touchdowns with 6, and despite missing 3 games. And prior to his injury in week 10, then he came back, and then he got re-injured. He was the number 1 fantasy tight end in fantasy, which is why so many people were in a hoopla about Rich trading him for a bag of beans, but then he got hurt. So the issue with Hooper isn't so much Hooper. It's his environment. Because we go from pass-happy Atlanta to run-heavy Cleveland. Uh, we go from Julio Jones, Calvin Ridley, and some Devontae Freeman to Odell Beckham Jr., Jarvis Landry, David Njoku, Kareem Hunt. Oh man, Nick Chubb. There's a lot of guys. So I like Hooper the player, but personally, I think Cleveland's going to ask him to block a lot, not catch passes. We are not paying OBJ. We do not have the highest paid receiving core in the NFL. Well, second highest paid, I suppose, if you count Houston, who's paying out the wazoo for a couple slot receivers and Stills and Cobb. But anyway, we're not paying Odell Beckham Jr. and Jarvis Landry essentially $30 million plus a year for Austin Hooper to be the number one option. We're just not doing it. I think they're going to soak up a ton, any sort of passing, receptions, I think they're going to soak up. And while Hooper did thrive last year as being the number 3 in Atlanta, it's very different from this offense, I believe, because I think Cleveland's going to run the ball a lot more. I mean, their head coach, Kevin Stefanski, has said multiple times, we are going to be a team that builds around the run. We're going to try and win with our defense, try and control the clock. We'll put Baker Mayfield in a lot of play action, and we're going to make sure that he's not as under much pressure as he was last year. All of those things tell me they're going to run the ball more. So I think Hooper was an excellent player last year. I am uncertain if I would take him as my tight end. I'm seeing very big regression because the offense and where he is and the talent around him. Not that, again, I like Calvin Ridley. I like Julio Jones. They're comparable to OBJ and Jarvis Landry. The offense is not. Neither are the running backs. So, yeah, it's difficult for me. I'm thinking, he had, 75 receptions? I'm thinking 50. And he had, 787 yards. I'm thinking 500. So, he had 6 touchdowns. I could see, 6 again. So, at least that'll stay the same. But I think he's, a borderline top 10 fantasy tight end, and not when he's healthy and playing the number 1 fantasy tight end. Just because, again, he was thriving last year, and they were in a pass-heavy offense, and this is not that. I don't believe that to be the same. I like the talent. He's now the 3rd highest paid tight end in football after Travis Kelce and George Kittle. But, again, it's difficult for me to see a way in which Hooper is even the number 4 option on that offense. He's behind Chubb and Odell and Jarvis and probably Kareem Hunt too. So I just think he's going to be blocking a lot. It's just not. I don't love it. I don't love him as my tight end. I know that you're really high on him last year. I know that I like the talent, but I would have liked him to go somewhere where he was going to be used and not somewhere where obviously he's getting paid very handsomely, so I don't disagree with going there, but it's not the same. It's situation's very, very different. So I don't love that as my starting tight end. Round 9. Okay, so round 9, more of a safer pick. We took Drew Brees. I think I mentioned this to you, one of the things that you like. I mean, Jimmy G was kind of a departure, but then you trade for Russell Wilson anyway after week 1. So you like older veteran quarterbacks. They're usually pretty safe. You usually know what you're getting. That's kind of one of your patterns. So yeah, this is exactly that. I think, I like Drew Brees. He missed 6 games last year, but it's not a big deal. He was the number 2 fantasy QB when he was healthy. So yeah, I mean, we're getting him round 9. That's good value. We hope he's healthy the whole time, but I mean, when he's playing, he's excellent. It's pretty simple. He had 28 touchdowns, 3 interceptions when he played. Come on, you can't beat that. Number 2 scoring QB when he played behind Lamar Jackson. Yeah, I'll take that all day. So he has a ton of weapons. He has Michael Thomas, Jared Cook, Emmanuel Sanders is brought in. Obviously Kamara. I suppose Latavius Murray is kind of quasi there. So I could see a 4,000-yard season if he's healthy the whole year. I could see 30, 34, 33, 34, 35 touchdowns. His interceptions will probably go up, maybe like 10, but yeah, no, he's a top 5 quarterback. To get that in the 9th round is terrific. So it's great value. I'm glad we have made the change to waiting on quarterbacks. This is very good. Very, very good. Next round, round 10. So good. We wait till double-digit rounds to take the defensive players. You should almost always do that. Otherwise, you're overdrafting. So we took Budda Baker. Budda Baker was very high on my board. Budda Baker was actually my number 1 defensive player on the board. Let's see. This is, if you had not taken Budda Baker 2 picks before me, I would have taken Budda Baker. And I took Khalil Mack. I very much like Budda Baker a lot. He is the number 1 safety. He is now the highest paid safety in the NFL. He, funny enough, has never gotten an interception in his entire career. I think he'll get one this year. He leads the league in tackles, typically from the defensive back position. He's getting paid like he's Troy Polamalu, and he kind of almost is. Almost. I'm not going to say he is. He almost is. But yeah, he's an excellent player, and he's really good against the run. His pass coverage isn't the best, but it's still probably in the top 25. Basically, I want to say top 25 defensive backs, so counting corners too. So he's pretty good at that too. But they usually ask him to be a box safety and do tackles, which is what makes him so valuable. I can't really argue with that. I'd much rather take an elite player at a scarce position than taking like a linebacker who is very easily replaceable, even if that linebacker's elite. So I think, what was it? Let's check. So yeah, Rich took Darius Leonard, who was the number 1 linebacker, I guess number 1 defensive player, I suppose, on the board in the 9th round. And we took Budda Baker in the 10th round. And I like Budda Baker for the value much better. Again, I had him as my number 1 defensive player on my board because positional scarcity and how elite he is. So, yeah, I can't argue with that. It's probably going to be the only time I talk about a defensive player, but I really did have him on my board. It's very rare for me to have a defensive player before round 12 on my board. So then after that, took Carlos Hyde. So good for Carlos Hyde to get paid. You got $4 million. Not great, but he had a 1,000-yard season last year with Houston. Am I thinking 1,000-yard season in Seattle? No, not exactly. Just because I think he is going to be backing up Chris Carson. I think this will be more of a timeshare than Rashad Penny because Penny has been slow and Carson has fumbling issues. So I could see Carlos Hyde. He's not going to get the volume he got last year with 250 carries, but I could see 150, 100, 125, 150. And I could see 500, 600 yards. He'll probably get 3 touchdowns. So not great. But, if something were to happen to Carson, knock on wood, Hyde's going to step right in. I know Penny's going to come back at some point from his torn ACL. We'll see how he joins the team. Obviously he was only the 30th ranked fantasy running back last year. So now we're talking borderline top 50. So I don't love it, but I don't hate it. He's good. He's an inefficient player at a low spectrum, but he has the possibility for more, so we can't really argue. In the 12th round, we took A.J. Dillon. This is a good fantasy pick, but it's also a really in a real life way, I really don't like him. But fantasy wise, 166 pick. So fantasy wise, obviously Dillon was a second round back, and usually when a team takes a player that high, they're expecting big things from them. Of course, there are exceptions. All of the entire Packers drafts, this Packer draft is the exception. It doesn't make any sort of sense. We took a running back in the 2nd round, we took a quarterback in the 1st, and we took a tight end in a fullback tight end in the 3rd, but no wide receivers. And we went to the NFC Championship game. Anyway, I'm gonna get into it. I think A.J. Dillon's probably going to be the goal line back because the Packers are dumb. It should be Aaron Jones all the way, but they're dumb. We're talking about a 3-headed monster. So I think next year he'll probably be the starter. He's a powerful downhill runner. He reminds me a bit. He's not as quick as Derrick Henry, but he has the same kind of run style as Derrick Henry. He's not much of a pass catcher. He's really, really athletic. He ran like a 4.5. He had a vertical of like 41 inches. He had a broad jump of 131. He's like 6 foot, 250 pounds. So he's like an athletic freak. But at some point he'll be a difference maker. Personally, I think he's like the third string running back right now. He should probably be the second because I really don't like Jamal Williams. So I guess that's why. I don't mind the upside because I think he's going to get some play. I'm hoping Aaron Jones stays healthy. I think if that's the case, A.J. Dillon's probably going to get like 100 carries or so. Just still 100 carries too many, personally. But, he's athletic. He's a good player. Obviously, the team believes in him. Typically, this would be someone drafted much higher based on his draft value in real life, but there's problems and things afoot in Green Bay, so we won't get into that. But I do like the selection because there is a lot of upside with Dillon, and if he was somewhere else, like Jacksonville, he'd probably be like a top 3 rounds pick. Probably be the starter in Jacksonville, but he's a third stringer in Green Bay, so it's a little strange. After that, we took Curtis Samuel, so we're taking Curtis Samuel in the 13th round. I don't mind the dice roll because we still don't know exactly how the Carolina offense is going to look. New coach Matt Rule, who was at Baylor, they had kind of more of a running offense, to be honest with you. New offensive coordinator Joe Brady, who had a high passing offense with Joe Burrow, and now we have Teddy Bridgewater, who, I guess a lot of people don't think he's the best deep ball thrower, but he's actually tremendously efficient. I know DJ Moore went in the 4th round. McCaffrey was the number 2 overall pick. But, we're getting what? We're getting Curtis Samuel in the 13th round. All that production's going to DJ Moore and Christian McCaffrey. There's no one else on that offense. I don't know. That seems kind of insane to me. So, I think Curtis Samuel was decent last year. I think he will be better just because the team can't be... Well, the team was pretty bad last year. I don't know if they can be as bad. I think they still will be bad because the defense is no good. But I think that helps him. I think he's... I know a lot of people are talking he's going to have a similar year to last year. And he's still trying to find his footing in this offense just because, he's not terribly efficient. But he was still the number 26 fantasy receiver last year. So I don't really know why. He had Kyle Allen as his quarterback for most of the season. And Will Grier. And he was the number 26 fantasy receiver. And he's going in the 13th round because why? Because DJ Moore and Christian McCaffrey are just so much better. 10 rounds better. I don't buy that. Samuel should have been drafted probably 4 rounds ago. So, yeah, I think the only rub is they have Robbie Anderson there, but I still think Samuel's probably a flex wide receiver on occasion. I still think he's going to get 750 yards at least. I think he's going to get more touchdowns, so maybe even 7. This is a good value pick. I personally think that Robbie Anderson is the sneaky option in Carolina, and he's going to take away from both Moore and Samuel. But for the draft value, just to see if Samuel's the guy is great. Everyone's high on DJ Moore. No one is high on Curtis Samuel. How is DJ Moore a round 4 pick and Curtis Samuel's a 13th round pick? There's no way that's that divergent, guys. I know, DJ Moore was good last year, but, really? That much better? I don't know if I really believe that. Yeah, he had, 11, he had, a 1,200 yard season, so, but he was, the number 1 option, and then Curtis Samuel still had a very good season. I don't know. I don't really get it. I think Samuel was a very good value play. And I know he's just the number 2 receiver. Maybe he's in the number 3, but I think there's something there in Carolina. And I'm rooting for him more so than the other guys because, DJ Moore's athletically gifted and Robbie Anderson's super fast. But Curtis Samuel's just a hard worker. And He's probably the best. Like, he reminds me a lot of Anquan Bolden, and I really like Anquan Bolden. And I think if Bridgewater can really just make the offense a little bit more efficient, I think he could make a big leap. And I'm willing to take a dice roll on that. There's going to be some lean weeks, but there could be some very good weeks too. So that's a very good selection on somebody that it's unfortunate he fell so far. We took DeMarcus Lawrence in the 14th round. Didn't have a great year last year. Very good the year before. We took Isaiah Simmons, the rookie linebacker out of Arizona. Don't really trust Arizona linebackers just because they typically don't know what they're doing with linebackers. Quote-unquote Hassan Reddick, if you want to look that up. We took Lamar Miller in the 16th round. He just got cut by the Patriots. And we picked up Ozebo, I believe is his name, Divine Ozebo, who technically is the number one starter on the Jaguars. I don't know how much I believe that personally. If I did, I would probably pick him up myself. But the Jaguars are being real weird. Ozigbo, yeah. Divine Ozigbo. Man, you got to dig deep for someone I don't really know. I know the guy had like 50 yards last year, but he mostly has special teams catches. It's a dice roll, sure. You got him for free, so nothing wrong with that. Last couple rounds. I mean, we already cut the Vegas linebacker that you took, Kowalski from... Yeah, he went from the Bears to the Raiders. So we already cut him. I'm pretty certain you cut him. Who did you cut him for anyway? Oh, Danny Trevathan. So yeah, for the Bears linebacker, that makes sense. So yeah, Trevathan's probably going to get like 100 tackles for sure in the Bears defense because Mitchell Trubisky's an idiot and also a bad quarterback. And last round. Oh, good. We took a kicker, Chase McLaughlin. Actually, did Chase McLaughlin just? Yeah, Chase McLaughlin just got cut by the Colts today. But I'm pretty sure you already cut him and got another kicker, if I remember correctly. Yeah, you took the Atlanta kicker, Younghoe Koo, who I really like and I had for a little bit. The reason why I like him actually is a personal thing. He's the only Asian, I think he's the only Asian player. He's the first Korean player in the NFL, and I think he's actually the only current, Asian player in the NFL. He's got a very interesting story. I was really excited to see him when he was playing for the Chargers and they drafted him. But then he got cut, but then he signed with Atlanta to finish the year last year, and he was pretty good. So I'm rooting for him personally, just because he's the first player from his country to play in the NFL. So, yeah, no, I really like Sarah's draft. I didn't love any single particular player, maybe except for possibly Barkley. But overall, the team is just tremendously good. Sarah's gotten better every year at drafting. That's why she has a championship. I mean, I don't love the Marlon Mack pick, but it gave you a cushion, some safety, just because we don't know if Montgomery's going to play, and obviously, I suppose going RB1 is very, very bad per exactly what I did. So I can absolutely respect doing that. I don't know if Evans might have been my wide receiver. I probably would have. I would have taken Tyreek Hill. I'm not gonna say probably. I would have taken Tyreek Hill over Evans, but I think Evans was the next best receiver in that round. So that's a good pick. I'm really high on Ridley, as you've seen. I don't love Hooper. Be on the lookout for a better tight end. I mean Fuller. I mean Evans, Ridley, and Fuller. Gosh. The only other team I really want to see... Let me see. The only other team I want to see is Ryan's team, just because I want to get a look for it. So Ryan has Thomas, Adams, and then his next wide receiver is Robbie. Okay, yeah. So I really like this team. And the biggest reason I like this team is I like Barkley. I like Montgomery. And personally, I think this team has the second deepest wide receiving core. Personally, I think my team has the deepest wide receiving core, but I spent a whole lot of draft capital on it, so I'm not sure how I feel about it. This team did not do as much. This wide receiving core is really good. I mean, Evans, Ridley, Fuller's basically a number one wide receiver when he's healthy. Tyler Boyd's a flex option. Curtis Samuel, I think, is a possible flex option. That's terrific value. 5 really good receivers. I had all those receivers high on my board. I like Barkley, obviously. I mentioned Drew Brees was the number 2 fantasy quarterback when he played last year. I mean, I like Buda Baker even. So overall, I think this team is really good. I think Sarah is competing for a championship. I think it's kind of strange to me that more teams don't talk about her drafts or pay attention as much. I was surprised that you picked. Well, I was surprised you took the number 3 pick, but seeing what you picked makes it very clear. You probably, as I mentioned, draft most like me, so I will say on that point I am kind of biased because I like drafts that I draft, obviously. But yeah, no, like a classic, as it has been said, a classic Warren Sharp draft. High upside, good players. I mean, just everything you can want. There's rookie players that with upside, there's injured players coming back with upside, there's players who are very consistent, there are older veteran players who you know you can count on, like everything. You're filled everywhere. So, yeah, I really, really like your team. I think Patrick, obviously, gold star to Patrick. I think Patrick had the best draft. But you are my number 2 team, sliding right in ahead of Alex and Hannah. So it's the girl teams. The girl teams really killed it. You guys did very good. So, really like this team a lot. Very good job, Sarah. I will give you, let's see, I gave Patrick an A. Probably A minus. No, I'll give you an A too. I mean, I just like his running back depth more than yours, but you have the second best receiving core. You have you're in the top 5 in running backs, despite the fact that I don't love Mac as your 3rd running back, and you have like a top 5 quarterback. So like everything matches up. Again, just be on the lookout for a tight end. Sorry this is so long, but I really like the team.